All right. Hello, this is Wmpyr. Super happy that you guys could join me again. This is, of course, like a radio style or podcast style video. And yeah, once again, here to talk about Escrima. And, when we say Escrima, that's going to include Kali, Arnis, you know. So these three, what I call Kia, Kali, Escrima, and Arnis. Basically the same thing. Basically, right? Generally speaking. And, I call my own style B1 Escrima. And the B1, I've said to you guys, what's up with the B1? B1 is basement level 1. When you get on an elevator and you see the button B1, it basically means underground. So that's where that comes from. That this is underground talk. So I am gonna go against what I see on social media. I'm not purposefully antagonizing, but I just feel that I am on the other side. And I am happy to share my thoughts with you here, in this rebellious way of thinking. We are the rebellion. We are underground here. This is like pirate broadcasting. And you could click on any Kia video on YouTube, and what they're gonna say is probably not on the same page as me. I'd say a 90% chance or higher that we are not on the same page. And yeah, it's bizarre. It's a weird time, but the public is being attracted, like a mosquito towards light, or the light that will kill you. So and look, the purpose here is not to say those people are wrong and I'm right. That's not what this is about. Okay. If I'm saying that I'm right and they're wrong, then I would want everyone to do what I'm doing, and I believe that mine is better. And none of that is my message here. Because first of all, and let me go against, let me try to explain and prove myself. Number one is that I honestly believe that there's many ways to climb up the mountain. So I believe that there are many paths. If I don't believe in that, then yeah, I think my path is the only one that's right. But I, been cross-training for many years, decades now, and I know that that's simply not true. I've met wonderful martial artists from many different styles. So that tells me that there are many different paths, even within Kia, even within Filipino martial arts, even within Escrima. There are many ways to do it. And there's wonderful people out there that are, that they're doing their craft. It's just unfortunate that there's a select few individuals on social media that put themselves like they're number one. Maybe they are number one at one thing, which is marketing, and they're very successful at it. But that doesn't mean that what they're teaching is good, or that it really makes sense, or any of those things. So, they're just really, really good at making commercials. And people confuse that because they're good at that what they're teaching is great quality stuff, and unfortunately it's not, and that's what I'm saying. There's room for evolution, though. They could always improve and get better, so I'm not here to judge them. What I am saying is there are a lot of holes in their arguments. You know, they're making big claims that you guys want to hear, and they're saying stuff that, you know, I guess it hits people's checklists, so that's why they're popular. And you guys have to walk away from that and have critical thinking. So I am encouraging two things. Number one is critical thinking. And then number two is, you know, evolve. So put that thinking, critical thinking into action and evolve. And if we don't do those two things, it becomes a very dangerous world of misinformation and a tyrant. A tyrant is in control and, you know, enjoying their power. And everyone's listening to them. And that is where the art starts to die, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm encouraged. I'm not saying I'm right, they're wrong. No, I'm saying we have to do these two things: critical thinking and evolve. And I am going to show you the example of how I do those two things and how I apply it to my Escrima. And hopefully you can use that as a guide, not be like me. No, because it was taught to me that you're supposed to make the art yours, meaning my version of the art is going to be different than my teacher's version of the art. And that'll be different from his teacher as well. So in other words, we're all going to be different from each other. And that's what it's supposed to be. Why? Because we are different from each other. And so that's why I don't believe that, you know, I'm right, they're wrong, you all should do what I'm doing. No, this is not a jealousy thing. This is not an insecure thing. And this is not a I want to be rich and famous. That's not what this is. Okay. So I hope you guys can understand that. I'm perfectly happy being underground, and part of that is, you know, how could you be happy with being underground? You've been on YouTube for a long time. Don't you want more subscribers? Don't you want more viewers? Don't you want more income? And the way that I see it is, you know, what I am teaching at the end of the day, and I was just reminded of this just yesterday, I believe, yesterday a day ago. Um, it was, is it okay for me to teach what I teach? Because at the end of the day, Escrima it comes from the battlefield. It is a military style. This is extremely dangerous stuff. So I believe it should be underground. This shouldn't be, hey, this is a commercial school, come learn how to kill people. You know, and I'm not saying that I teach my students how to kill people, but that is what the original art is. You know, I've evolved it for self-defense. So no, I don't teach people how to kill people, but um in order for me to understand how to do self-defense more effectively, I had to go back to its roots. And the roots is, you know, it is a killing art. So, yeah, I definitely had to ask myself this question. And it only makes sense that it is underground and it should be underground. All right, so the other day, how I was reminded of this again. I was on YouTube watching conspiracy theory videos of all things. Yeah, you know, sometimes I like to do that. You know, watch these crazy conspiracy videos, and Oh no, my bad. It wasn't YouTube. It was Tubi TV. Yeah, free streaming Tubi TV. Yeah. So if you have if everybody can access Tubi, and I recommend it. If you get on Tubi, you don't need Netflix. You don't have to pay. Yes, it's has commercials. Yes, it's limited, but I'm fine with all that. Um, I came from an era where there were commercials in the 80s. That was normal. 90s, that's normal. You had commercials. So, but yeah, on Tubi, I watched a documentary about Stanley Kubrick, and they were talking about the conspiracy theory of what is it, MK Ultra, and what a Project Monarch, that assassins, brainwashed assassins kind of thing. That's what they're talking about, and how The Shining is really about that. And it was a very interesting documentary, very very entertaining. Um, but yeah, um, they were talking about brainwashing agents through repetition. And I thought to myself, well, in martial arts, we all do repetition. And if you do repetition, is that going to help? And the answer is absolutely. You need to do repetition. And through repetition, it'll link you to where you can use your skills in real life. It provides that link. And therefore, if I'm teaching traditional Kia, traditional Escrima, and like I said, that links us, the origin for all that is battlefield. It is a killing art. And if we're doing repetitions, what are we really wiring, hardwiring ourselves? What are we putting into our muscle memory? And I'm starting to stop using the word muscle memory, because Tony Blauer says neurologically, neuroscience, that doesn't exist, muscle memory. But I think we all have a idea of it. I don't think that the idea is false, but I think the scientific details is false. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent there. So yeah, that made me question. It's like, is it okay to teach this stuff? That's what I was really really start to think. And before, in the past, I was never that worried, because I knew most people would not be as dedicated as I was. Therefore, and I'm nothing special, but just even the level that I got to, most people wouldn't put in the effort to do that. Therefore, they'll never see what I got to see, as far as this is just a mental projection, or imagery or imagination kind of thing, but the link to the battlefield stuff. They'll never see it at that level. So if they did, I'd be worried, because that's when they're gonna start to have like the capability of killing someone, technically. Just, and it takes a lot more to do it than just technically. So I'm not saying that, oh, I'm a trained killer. No, I'm not. I'm no way. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm some assassin, or self-trained assassin, or no, I am not. And like I said, I've evolved to where I am not. I am very far away from that. my purpose is self-defense. My purpose is I don't even really like to call it self-defense anymore. I call it survival. So street survival, you know, altercation survival is probably the more technically accurate word. Altercation survival. I just made that up right now. I like the sound of that. Yeah. Um, anyhow, so let me put that subject to rest. And this is what I'm going to try to do from now on. When I make these videos, I want to because before I like covered a lot of different things, and they just kind of like went from one topic to the next. Like they connected, yes, but I just like strung you along, so maybe let's say I'm talking about sticks, and then from sticks I go to knives, and yet yes, it's connected, but and then from knives to empty hand, and then from empty hand maybe to MMA, and then MMA to BJJ. So I'm going off on this crazy path, and it's all connected, yes, but it just keeps going and going and going. I don't want to do that. I think that could be very difficult to follow, and I think that could be kind of frustrating. So I want to like segment it more. All right. So they could still be connected, right? They could still be connected, but I want to be done with each little part that I talk. So that previous part's done. That previous part could probably be divided into two. It's done. All right. The next part, still loosely connected, but the next part here, I want to go into the one system idea taught in FMA, Filipino martial arts. It also exists in like JMA, Japanese martial arts, and CMA, Chinese martial arts, and KMA, Korean martial arts. Provided all three of those are, they're directly connected in how they were passed, from China to Korea to Japan, or China to Japan to Korea, or whatever. But you see that they are connected literally in how historically. But the one system idea where you could go from, in Escrima, you could go from like a machete, or I should start with sticks. You could go from sticks to like a machete, a long bladed weapon, to a knife, which is a short bladed weapon, and then to empty hand. And then there's other improvised weapons, but these improvised weapons need to be single-handed. But you can link all of those together, right? So you're learning double stick skills, but then from double sticks you could go to a bladed weapon and transfer those skills. So even though you were doing sticks, you can use a bladed weapon. And even though you're using a bladed weapon, you could do empty hand stuff too. So to be able to go smoothly from sticks to blades to empty hand to improvised weapons, this is the one system idea. And for me, that is one of the selling points of Escrima. This is why I liked it so much, is because, I'm just doing one thing, but then I can transfer it over to other weapons. So it's like I'm getting a really, really good deal. Whereas in some other arts, it's like, okay, you're going to learn nunchucks, and that's a separate class. You're going to learn the staff. That's a separate class. You're going to learn, the sword, and that's another separate class. And all three are different, Whereas in FMA, you learn sticks, and let's say if you quit right there, technically, you still can use blade, empty, even though you didn't get there yet. You have blade skills, empty hand skills, and improvised weapon skills. You already have it just because it's the one system. So even if you stopped with just the sticks, if you wanted to, using the one system method, you should be able to go to those other weapons. So to me, that was amazing. That was wonderful, and training wise, it doesn't waste any time. So it makes sense that the military would like it. Now, I saw a video the other day, or last night, I believe it was last night, on YouTube. And of course, like world famous Kia instructor, and a lot of followers. A lot of people think what this person teaches is gold, and oh boy, we have to, like I said, critical thinking, people, critical thinking, and then evolve. You have to evolve. Don't be a mindless cult follower, and that's exactly what this person wants. This person is just making their ego bigger, and I think they're making their downfall. The more popular they get, the harder they're going to fall at some point. At some point, the illusion, the magic mirror is going to crack. But anyway, they were talking about the one system, and right away I saw a hole in what they were doing. Okay, so this next part that I want to talk about is, don't do the one system this way because it's going to be wrong. Gosh, wrong, maybe the wrong word. Because then they're wrong, I'm right. And I don't want to go there. That's not my point, right? So what I'm saying is the way they're doing it has holes and it doesn't make sense. So that needs to be fixed in order to move forward. A progression. This is about progression. This is not about me judging and saying they're wrong. This is me looking at what they're doing and going, well, honestly, I feel like I've been there. So we need to move forwards. And I'm encouraging this person and his viewers, once again, use critical thinking and evolve, progress, move forwards. Because right now, even though this guy's saying, this is the truth, this is the end all be all kind of thing, this is the way it is, it's not. I don't think so at all. And oh, that's so sad when people listen to him and go, oh, he's right, he's the best, and this is correct, and everything else is wrong. No, you could progress so much more. You guys can move forwards. You guys need to evolve. And this is, in my opinion, where he has the hole in his argument. His logic don't make sense. Okay, when you do the one system, what you need to be careful of, the one system concept, what you absolutely have to be careful of is you cannot go into specializations. You have to stay in generalizations, because this is something I learned from Professor Bram Frank. So Professor Bram Frank was told by his instructor, who is my instructor's instructor, Professor Remy Presas, that they would see Filipino martial arts people. So they would go to, I guess, some kind of like seminars or like group seminars where there's multiple instructors, and they would watch what they're teaching. And Professor Bram Frank was told by Professor Remy Presas, hey, the way they're doing those techniques, that is not applicable for blade. So even though it's the same style, that is not a one system. In other words, those people have evolved the stick so much that those skills have become only stick. It's specialized techniques that only apply to stick. So I had to, in my own training, because I learned some of that. I did. Some of the techniques that I learned were only applicable for stick. So I had to think, well, how would it be different for blade? And then whatever my answer was, could I now use it that way also for the stick? So it has to go both ways. It can't just be, now this is the way I would do it for blade, and then that could turn into blade only techniques where it's not going to work for stick, or it's not going to work in empty hand. So I had to constantly think about that. So I had to, in other words, you have to take it down a notch and make it more generalized. If you go further into the evolutions of each weapons, then it becomes specialized skills. So what I was seeing here by this world famous instructor was they were showing, in my opinion, they didn't say this, but it's empty hand skills. It's based off of empty hand skills. Why? Because I believe this instructor has been brainwashed by modern tactical stuff on YouTube, and this person has thought, oh, this is the way to go, and is basing now all of his Kia material off of that. And and I get it, because I kind of did something similar, but with MMA. I saw MMA as a nice core. So if you look at my old books, my original books from like 2006, 2007-ish, around that time where I had the K4S system, I clearly say the core is MMA. And then on top of that, we sprinkle weapons. We put sticks, knives, and improvised weapons and stuff. But the basis is MMA. And so I said that. And now I disagree with that. I found a different core. So it's not that I disagree with that. I understand why I said that, because it does provide, and it does provide a solid logic. But when you look at for example, the Dog Brothers and watch one of their gatherings where they're going full contact stick fighting, it looks like MMA with sticks. That's what it looks like. So that was a great hint for me to reach that conclusion, and it was it, and I believe in some of the books I actually mentioned that, and by some of the books I mean it's one book. It's my K4S system book, but I've done many revisions. But in that book, I mentioned at least in some of them, I mentioned the Dog Brothers. And I give credit where credit is due, and I say, if you watch those guys, it's MMA with sticks. So when I have a knife, what do you think it's going to look like? MMA with knives. So that's why MMA is a good core. Now, I found something, in my opinion, that is more suitable for real life application, because at the end of the day, MMA is a sport. So I've always said to you guys that there are similarities and differences between street and sport, and you have to look at both. You can't just look at just the differences, because that's what everybody and their mother does, and to me that's where they have holes in their arguments. So you have to look at similarities as well. All right, so I've said that. It's nice and simple. Look, don't ignore the similarities. Look at both. And once you've done that, then the differences can be applicable. If you only look at the differences, it's one-sided. It's not a realistic viewpoint you have. But once you've done both, then we could really start taking into considerations the differences, once you've considered the similarities as well. And when I did that, it didn't take me to MMA. It wasn't my core anymore. My core was something lost. something that pretty much doesn't exist anymore. And that core, to me, I had to go all the way back to like caveman days in my mind. I had to travel back and go, how did cavemen um, survive back in those days? How did they do combat? And so it had to do with the spear. And then from the spear, you know, the sword evolved off of that. And things of that nature. But I had to go back there and I uncovered something. Now, obviously, from caveman days went into battlefield days. So ancient battlefields where humans fought in battlefields. I'm talking about like, you know, thousands against thousands, or hundreds versus hundreds, and weapons, shields, armors, bow and arrows, horses, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know, castles and you know, the warfare, right? But that is not applicable necessarily, or as applicable for today's self-defense as what came after that. And what came after that became my core. And that, the closest thing that I've seen to that would be like Escrima. Another thing I could mention is like um, I think in Europe what they had was something like they had the sword, one-handed sword, and then from there they went to the cane, because that you don't walk around with a sword, so you're walking around with a cane. So the sword skills became transferred to the cane. So you have a cane that you're walking around with in civilian life, and that's what you're going to use. But you have those sword skills, and then from there you also had kicking, which is like the savate, and you also had the punching, which is the boxing. And honestly, you combine both, and then you get like pancration. So that also brings in the wrestling. Um, so you had the sword, the stick, basically, and empty hands. So those three, to me, is the core art. And the guy that discovered that by accident, in my opinion, is Bruce Lee. So he came up with something like that on his own. And Kia teaches pretty much the same thing as that. And that to me is like it's lost today. People have, even the people that practice Kia, they've forgotten it. Clearly, in the case of this example of this guy on YouTube that, you know, like I said, is a world famous instructor, but his stuff is based off of empty hands, today's self-defense, ultra-aggressive style, which to me is a misinterpretation of Captain Fairbairn. So, yeah, they're in my opinion, they're not doing Captain Fairbairn stuff very well. Why do I say that? Because I feel like there's some holes in what they're doing, and but they think that's the way to go for today's self-defense, you know. That's what they think, and I just feel like there's a lot of holes in what they're teaching, but it's a lot of marketing, a lot of advertising, and a lot of people buying into it, and it's kind of scary. It is scary. And I don't want to argue with these people because they're like zombies. They're brainwashed. And that's why I'm hidden here in the underground. And if you're watching this, a big congratulations to you, in freeing up your mind and, welcome to the world of critical thinking and evolving, progressing. Move forwards. Don't become dead. Don't become a dead zombie follower, cult follower. You know. So yeah, you cannot be doing one system or claiming one system when your stuff is highly specialized empty hand skills. It's not gonna make sense. It won't make sense. I don't think it's going to work at all. Like, you try that in a real life situation and you're going to get destroyed. It doesn't make any sense to me to use that. So um, the one system has to be based off of not empty hands, but off of the weapons. So when we look at, like, for example, trapping in Wing Chun, people are looking at it from an empty hands point of view. And to me, um, that is where you're going to have a lot of trouble. You're not going to understand the art. In my opinion, you're not going to fully understand it. So, to uncode trapping, in my opinion, you have to go to weapons. Once you go to weapons, I'm going to use what Sensei Pedro told me. Is he calls it binding. When you see binding, then you go, that's trapping. That's empty hand version of that is trapping. Is binding in HEMA, historical European martial arts. So, and what I call there is clashing. I developed off of that because I never studied HEMA, so or at least officially or formally, and not to anything significant, but so I developed something clashing that is based off of, once again, the weapons. It's the similar stuff. So once I have clashing, I can apply that to empty hands, and that would be my trapping methodology. So it's pretty simple, and for me, the ideas are very simple and they fit together almost like a puzzle. I'm the hardest part is explaining it to you guys, but hopefully I'm getting better and better at explaining all this to y'all. And that does take practice. So I have this wonderful medium called YouTube that helps me do that, where I'm getting practice explaining this to y'all. I'm getting lots and lots of practice, as much as I want. So I will keep practicing and keep hopefully making my explanations better and better and better. But yeah, if you're gonna do the one system, this is the main message of this video today, is that it cannot be based off of empty hands, and it cannot be based off of, well, when I say empty hands, the reason why I say that is it's so easy to forget the weapons. So that's why I say that. But really, it cannot be based off of specialized techniques. So with the sticks, for example, if someone were to attack me with an impact weapon, right? So like a like a steel pipe, right? And I use my umbrella to defend against that, right? So let's say I block with the umbrella, and then I grab the steel pipe to, to try to take it away from him, do a disarm, right? So let's say I'm trying to do that. Obviously, I cannot do that if it's a bladed weapon. I can't grab the weapon. But because it's a steel pipe, I'm grabbing the weapon. So that is a specialized technique. If they have a rifle and I'm trying to disarm them of their rifle, I'm trying to take it away. So I'm grabbing the rifle. Once again, this is a specialized technique. And there's certain ways you could grab the rifle and try to twist it out of them. But like I said, this is very, very specialized for the rifle or the shotgun, or even a pistol. There's finger locks I could put the person in with a pistol, and that's very, very specialized for that. It's not going to happen with a knife. So those are not one system techniques. Okay. So if I want a true one system technique is going to be something I could do with a stick, an impact weapon, something I could do with a bladed weapon, and something I could do with empty hands. So you have to be able to check it that way, and if it doesn't check, then you have to throw it out of the one system. I'm not saying don't practice it, because if someone pointed a pistol at me, yeah, I have counter pistol techniques. That's very, very specific to a pistol. And I would have no qualms using it if necessary. And I remember in one situation where a handgun was pointed at me. I didn't do the technique, but I went about 50% where I grabbed the pistol, and I was a second away from doing the technique, but I did get that far, and then I had to stop myself. But I did get that far. So I'm just saying, in real life, you do whatever that works. I'm not going to go in real life, I'm not going to do this because it's not the one system. But I do have to tell myself that the one system stuff is where I'm going to be strongest at. So I'm going to have a tendency of doing something that I'm stronger at. Know what you're strong at. Know what you're weak at. So what am I strongest at? The one system stuff. That's where I have the most repetitions. So anyway, that's really all that I wanted to talk about. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's it for now. Viva la revolución. I feel like I needed to say that. So anyway, thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.